Were you on tour with Roy Orbison? My notes say Roy Orbison, Aerosmith, Hart, Fleetwood Mac, the Oak Ridge Boys, Alabama, and the Judds. So tell me something about that stuff.
Well, I mean, and there are probably a lot more that's not listed there. You know, of course, when Kiss You All Over hit, you know, we were touring there for a few years with everybody, you know, Aerosmith, Hart, you mentioned Fleetwood Mac. And then, of course, in the early 80s, we switched over to a country format and toured with particularly the Oak Ridge Boys. We toured with them for well over a year. Lee Greenwood, the Gatlins, the Judds actually, when they first started out, they were opening for us, and then they, of course, then at a certain point we started opening for them.
Right, they did well.
They did very well, and so you know it's been quite a wide variety of artists that we've toured with. But it's all the same. I mean, you get on stage and you do the best show you can, and that's just it, you know. So we've it's been a really wide variety of artists, that's for sure.
So what you referenced the band's shift from pop to country, I guess in the early '80s. What inspired that, and how did that kind of come to be?
Well, we were, after Kiss You All Over, we had a couple of other singles, moderate success in the States. Now we were having a lot of success overseas in Europe and Australia and Japan, everything. So we did some touring there, but frankly, we weren't having hits in the States. You know, things were kind of starting to taper off. But at the same time, songs that were written by, in other words, Exile songs were starting to be recorded by country artists, namely Alabama. Two of their biggest hits, "Take Me Down" and "The Closer You Get," were both Exile songs originally. You know, written by
really?
JP, and they were on rock and pop albums, and we actually released each of those as singles. They didn't really do very well. I think because I think our record company had kind of lost interest at that point. Then also Les wrote a song that was a #1 for Janie Fricke at the time called "It Ain't Easy Being Easy." Our manager came to us at a certain point and said, "Look, you know, things are slowing down in the rock and roll field, but your songs are being huge hits in the country field. So let's go basically change genres and try to go, you know, into the country field." And also the country field was also changing at that same time. You know, groups like Alabama and the Oak Ridge Boys, more, I guess you would say, country rock oriented acts were starting to have success. So it was actually just good timing, I think, on our part. And frankly, we didn't really change our sound that much because we always had, I think, more of an R&B gospel background to what we were doing. So we didn't really have to change our sound very much at all. So we went to, you know, Nashville, and I got a great country producer named Buddy Killen who produced our albums, and we had success fairly quickly. I mean, you know, within a year or two, and thanks to guys like the Oak Ridge Boys who were, you know, just extremely nice to us and took us on tour, and people like that. It was very, and really we had a lot more success in the country field. We had, I think, 10 #1s over the decades, a bunch of other top 10 songs, a couple of gold albums. So that continued on into the 90s. So it was a brilliant move on our management's part, you know, even though well, I don't think we questioned it too much, you know, but as I say, being from Kentucky, it made a lot of sense. We all knew, you know, country music anyway, you know, so it worked out pretty well.
And you all probably felt like country boys in the big city a lot of times anyway. So country music was just a short step.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, a lot of times when we were touring with, frankly, some of the more crazy rock acts like Aerosmith and people like that, I I always felt a little out of our element, and when we were maybe in London and England a few times playing in some of these punk clubs, we definitely felt out of our element.
Well, I bet.
So we felt right at home when we went to the country genre.
Right. Did you? So you mentioned that your sound didn't change much. I'm interested in, because to my ear, the music. You're right. It didn't change much. So what? Did you change anything? Did you add a fiddle, like the
No,
Alabama song? You got to have a fiddle in the band. Did you
no,
a pedal
we
steel guitar? Anything?
no. That was kind of our. Actually, that's one point. One thing well, a couple of things we insisted on. First of all, we insisted on playing on our own records, which was really unusual in the country music field. And I think we're the first group to do it, because everyone used studio musicians because they're great studio players there, and still are. But we insisted on playing on our own records. And I don't know that we made a big issue of it, but we and our producer kind of agreed there was no point in bringing in extra musicians. I know on the first album, actually Ricky Skaggs came in and played a fiddle solo on one song. Oddly enough, Lee Greenwood came in and played a saxophone solo on another
Really?
one of those songs, which was a real R&B sounding song. But other than those guys, we've never used any outside players.
Neat.
Which I think is unique, and it also lends us to being able to reproduce what we do live, and that's something when we record, we always kind of think, well, let's make sure we can reproduce this, and
Absolutely.
when we're recording it. So as you said, nothing changed much at all. We didn't have to add a fiddle or a steel or we didn't feel like those kind of instruments really fit what we did. So
Right.
it never was really an issue through the years.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think you guys you've got your own sound, but it's more of a melting pot kind of sound. It's got some flavors of kind of Beatles kind of sound, no doubt.
Yeah.
In a lot of songs, but you're also broad. Like, you don't have, all your songs don't sound the same, even as far as genre. You're kind of broad.
Yeah, and another thing that we kind of like, we have an album that we recorded last year called A Million Miles Later, and a single out now, which actually sounds very Beatle-like, if you think about it. But when we were recording this last project, we're in a position now where we don't really have to worry about mainstream radio play, because frankly they're not going to play us anyway. So it's kind of nice to be able to go into an album project recording sort of what we want to record. We don't worry, like we may have one song that sounds like a Louisiana Bayou song, and a couple of more hardcore country songs, a lot of R&B sounding stuff, and to say a couple of Beatles sounding stuff. So it was actually it's nice to have that freedom to be able to record what we want, and that's really what we are. We don't really fit in a certain category. I don't think we're just us, basically.
Yeah, I think that's definitely valuable as a musician. Making an album that all sounds themed, sounds like it all kind of has the same pedal effects and on every instrument. That seems pretty boring, especially if you're having to support that in a live show. Yeah,
I think so. I mean, there are exceptions, maybe like if it's a themed album, like a Pink Floyd album or something, but we never really. We never wanted to do anything like that. And yeah, your point's well taken. If I'm listening to an album, I don't want every song to sound the same. It's going to get pretty boring after a few cuts. And the same with our live show. I don't think I mean, we basically sound sort of the same, but by different instrumentation and different keyboard settings and that sort of stuff. You want, you know, you want things to sound slightly different. And another thing too, if I can brag on us, is we have 3 different lead singers. So that's one thing that makes it's a great variety when you're hopefully when the audience is listening, because you have 3 different people singing lead, and the harmony structures are different when each person sings lead. So because I know I've gone to concerts where there's maybe been a great solo artist, but frankly, after an hour and a half, you kind of, I wouldn't say you get bored, but it's kind of the same voice, you know. So
no, I would say that. I would say you do get bored, and it's not because they're any less great, but
no.
after 10 songs or 20 songs, you've heard it.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
there's only so much dynamics that a single voice can have.
Yeah, so I think that's one thing that's worked to our advantage, and the 3 different singers each have a different type of voice. So I think hopefully it makes our shows more interesting just because of that, and because of the variety.
I guarantee you it does.